I honestly, I watched a lot of basketball yesterday. And again, this is part of my hypotheses for why NBA ratings year to year are down, even on ESPN. Right? And the hypothesis basically goes like this. Basketball's on all the time. Right? It's on all the time. And so there isn't there just isn't the level of intensity normally reserved for the playoffs. There isn't anything special. It's not only on at night. Like literally basketball is on all the time, which is great for those of us ball guys, and we can watch all the time. But for mainstream America, there just isn't the same sense of urgency when it's on every night and there's just game after game, and it's really kind of hard to tell the difference between the playoffs and the regular season or even in the scrimmages. It literally looks exactly the same. But one of the things that has happened in the bubble happens in the regular season, and frankly, it's happened a lot in sports, mostly in basketball, is our infatuation with offensive stats. Right? Offensive stats. Stats can tell the story and especially to people who haven't watched a basketball game or haven't watched the basketball game, but they need some context. The perfect example is LeBron James, who in the first game statistically was dominant. But in the fourth quarter, there were several times in which he deferred and it was obvious that he had to take over. What I find fascinating about yesterday, and I'll say this about Milwaukee and about Houston, but mostly about the LA Lakers, is I do feel like so many people are missing it. You have to play to your strengths, right? You got to play to your strengths. It's no different. Yesterday is National Radio Day, right? What are my strengths? Hey, I believe that I'm one of the best interviewers in radio. Those are my strengths. I know what my weaknesses are. I won't share them with you, but we also won't do them. Right? Colin's strengths are he has really strong opening segments, a lot of really interesting business metaphors. I have some of that. It's not as strong as Colin's. That's why he plays to those strengths. You listen to Fox Sports Radio and different shows are portrayed differently, right? Play to your strengths. The number one thing I learned when I was trying to play professional basketball, and if I could do it again, when I played coming out of college, I had a reputation of a guy who couldn't shoot. And so you know what I set off to do? Prove to everybody I could shoot. Do you know what that was? A mistake. That's what amateurs do. Amateurs try to prove to you that the scouting report you have on them is completely wrong. Whereas professionals go like, yeah, okay, I can shoot. Like every once in a while I'll knock down an open one. But there's no reason I can't make a ton of plays without shooting. Play to your strengths. That's what pros do. And what is the strength of this LA Lakers team? It's not three-point shooting. I think that's been made obvious. Right? What's lost in the palaver about does LeBron have it anymore? And I think, I'm going to play for you a cut in a second that does kind of explain what it's like to be in your mid-30s trying to compete with guys in their 20s and earlier 30s that haven't played as much basketball as he's played, aren't as big a body as he is. But forget LeBron's scoring. The Lakers have the best record in the Western Conference, which it's inarguable. It's a tougher conference than the Eastern Conference, right? And it may not be at its peak this year because Golden State chose not to really compete because the Spurs are in transition because, Porzingis hadn't played in a year and a half and Luka is just in his second year. Like they're not yet there, but they're close. You can see Phoenix starting to figure it out, but it took them, having 3 months off and in the bubble to when they finally kind of figured it out. The Pelicans feel like they may be a year or two away from having full Zion. So the West is not what it's been or what it may well be, but it's still pretty damn good, right? They had the best record in the West. Why? Why? The whole year they haven't been able to shoot. That hasn't changed. The whole year LeBron James has been up and down in terms of his burst athletically. The whole year they struggle with Anthony Davis finishing games and being aggressive in the fourth quarter. Danny Green has looked like the oldest man on earth all year. Kyle Kuzma's been up and down. How could they possibly have the best record in the West? What's their strength? The defense. They've been the best defensive team in the NBA. And while, they lost Damian Lillard, he hit a couple deep threes, and they got confused, and Melo hit a couple, and CJ McCollum hit some shots. They're just amazing in game one. The fact is that in spite of that late barrage by the Portland Trailblazers and the win by the Blazers, who want to score in the 120, scored 100 points. And last night it was 88. We do this thing where you only play well by anybody's estimation if the stats say you scored a bunch of points and had a bunch of assists. And if you throw in some rebounds, meaningful or meaningless, it doesn't really matter. That's what we care about. But what's the truth? The truth is, if the other team doesn't score, none of your ineptitude actually matters. It just doesn't. None of your ineptitude matters. And I sit here and look at the Lakers, and I feel like so many people are missing what they did last night is the reason that they were the 1 seed. It's the same thing that it's what's been lacking with Houston. And granted, they were playing a very young Oklahoma City team, but if you watch that game in the fourth quarter, they decided they're not going to score. And that's what happened with the Milwaukee Bucks, who have been an elite defensive team. Yes, did Giannis get it going early, and did they get out to a big lead, and they had Orlando on their heels? Sure, all of that can be true. But we say this all the time, Colin and I. In the NFL, you're not going anywhere unless you got a top 10 defense. And in the NBA, the truth about the Warriors during their championship run and when they won 73 games, they were the best, analytically, they were the best defensive team in the NBA. When that fell apart, so too did the Warriors.